Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping right into some really interesting material you sent over. Think of this as your direct line to understanding some potentially powerful ideas.
And today, we're looking at excerpts from a text. It's dated April 10th, 2025, and it's called Aaj Ki Murli.
Today's message in Hindi,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it seems very much centered around, spiritual, philosophical concepts.
Right. So our mission, our goal here is to really get under the surface, not just summarize, but unpack the core teachings, find the main ideas, and see what this unique perspective offers for, well, for personal growth and maybe understanding the world a bit differently.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, let's dive in. It kicks off talking about something called padamel. What's the deal with that?
Podamel, right?
What?
Well, it seems to be a practice, like a daily thing.
Yeah.
A self-reflection, almost like auditing your own day.
An audit. Okay.
Oh.
How does that work?
The text poses specific questions. Things like, how was your conduct throughout the day? How did you actually behave? And crucially, were you honest towards the yagya?
Yagya. What does that signify here? It sounds important.
It does. It seems to refer to maybe a spiritual endeavor, or perhaps the community involved in that endeavor. Like, were you true to the collective spiritual effort?
So it's about your actions and your integrity within this spiritual framework. Like, did you practice what you preach, basically?
Precisely. It's about that internal honesty.
And what if you skip this? If you don't do this daily review, are there consequences mentioned?
Yes, the text suggests that skipping it can actually hold you back. It can hinder your personal progress.
Hold you back how?
It mentions being subject to Maya slap.
Maya slap. That sounds intense.
It does. We can probably interpret Maya as negative influences, illusion, or maybe setbacks on your path. So skipping the reflection makes you more vulnerable to those.
Okay, so it's a protective practice, too. What's the ideal, then, according to the text?
The ideal presented is, well, quite high. It's to have conducted yourself like deities and to have lived by rules, not like amateurs.
Wow, like deities. That's
Yeah.
quite the standard. It really pushes for serious self-awareness and conduct.
It definitely does. And it also touches on something interesting, how rare it is for people to honestly write down their own flaws or mistakes.
That rings true, doesn't it? We often want to present the best version, even to ourselves.
Absolutely. And this honesty, especially towards the yagya, seems incredibly important to what the text calls the Father.
The Father, meaning a divine figure or a spiritual guide.
It seems so, yes. A divine being or a central guide within this system. The text says this father figure holds great regard, really values the children, the followers, who are completely truthful, who conceal nothing about their engagement with the yagya.
So honesty is really prized. How is that regard shown? Are there signs?
The text gives a few examples. These truthful individuals are cherished. It uses a lovely Hindi phrase, puchkar de uthate, which sort of means like being picked up with affection.
That's quite evocative.
It is. And they're also entrusted with service, which probably means important roles or responsibilities within the spiritual community.
Okay, and maybe most significantly, they gain the wisdom to seek guidance called shrimeth. Truthfully, honesty opens the door for real guidance.
Makes sense. Honesty leads to trust and deeper connection. Okay, moving on. The text then seems to shift focus to the nature of the divine itself. And it starts by correcting a song reference. That caught my attention.
Yes, it's interesting how it begins that section. It quotes a line, Mafilmen jal uthi shama, the lamp lit up in the gathering. But then it immediately says, no, that's wrong, because Paramamana Kata per Paramatma. The Supreme Soul or God is not a shama, not a lamp.
Why is that specific distinction important? Correcting that metaphor right away.
Well, the text explains that people use various names and metaphors for the divine-like lamp because they lack real, true understanding. It's a sign of limited knowledge.
So metaphors can sometimes obscure rather than illuminate. In this view, yes. It even mentions neti, not this. That philosophical idea that the divine is beyond description. The text suggests even atheists might use various names, but it comes from a place of not truly knowing.
What about scriptures? Do they provide this true introduction according to the text?
Apparently not, or at least not sufficiently. The text claims the scriptures, as commonly understood, don't contain the true introduction of the Father.
And because of that?
Because of that, those lacking this specific knowledge are considered, within this framework, atheists, even if they believe in something.
That's a strong claim. It really centers its own specific understanding.
It does. And it emphasizes that truly grasping oneself as a soul and then remembering the Father correctly takes real intellectual capacity, buddhi, it calls it.
Buddhi, intellect. This leads to that idea of being ascendant-minded. Can you unpack that a bit?
Right, stone buddhi.
Oh.
It's a powerful image. The text explains that the intellect, the buddhi, resides in the soul. But currently, many are in this state of being stone-minded or ignorant. It contrasts this with having an intellect like paras.
Paras. What's that?
A touchstone. Something that can transform base metal into gold. So your intellect can either be transformative, alive, like paras, or inert, resistant, like stone.
And that state determines your spiritual condition.
Exactly. It's about whether your mind is receptive to this higher knowledge or stuck.
And there's a specific common belief about the soul that this text refutes, isn't there?
Yes, a very important point. It directly argues against the idea that the individual soul is God, that the soul is Paramatma.
Why is that distinction so critical for them?
The text argues that believing I am God leads to irresponsible behavior. Because if you think you are the ultimate authority, you might disregard the guidance or authority of the Father. Maintaining that separation is key to their framework.
I see. That clarifies the relationship they envision. Now, what about this figure of Maya? It was mentioned earlier with Maya's slap. It sounds like a major obstacle.
Oh, absolutely. Maya, or Maya Ravan, as it's sometimes called, is presented as this pervasive force of illusion, a negative power.
And its effect.
The text says Maya has made essentially everyone stone buddhi. It's the source of that ignorance.
So Maya is actively working against understanding.
Yes, and its influence is growing. The text talks about tamopradhan, darkness, ignorance increasing day by day. Maya's pull is strong, making genuine self-improvement really, really difficult.
Like swimming against a strong current.
Exactly. You could think of it like all the distractions, the negativity, the materialism in the world constantly pulling you off course.
Which makes that daily self-check, the Panmal, even more vital, right? To counteract Maya's influence.
Precisely. It's like trying to keep your bearings in a fog. The text notes how shame, influenced by Maya, makes it hard to be truthful about mistakes, even though the Father values that honesty so much.
And it connects this to ego.
Yes, dehankar, body consciousness or ego. Getting too caught up in the self, the ego, makes you susceptible to Maya's influence, leading to those setbacks, those slaps.
It's a constant battle then. This brings us to the bigger picture stuff. The world drama, the 5,000-year cycle. What's the core idea there?
The text describes time as cyclical. A 5,000-year cycle called a drama. At the end, time essentially repeats.
So everything happens again.
That's the implication, which means the Father has to come back and explain everything all over again in the next cycle.
Wow. Okay. And within this cycle, there's a goal.
The goal is Raje, kingship or spiritual sovereignty, but the text stresses this is not easy. It requires immense effort in the battle against Maya.
The battle. And they use a boxing analogy. That seemed vivid.
Yes, the boxing analogy, and it really highlights the intensity of the struggle. Even skilled boxers get knocked out. Similarly, even those making good spiritual progress can stumble, can be knocked out by Maya if they aren't vigilant. It's not a passive journey at all. Constant effort is needed.
So vigilance and effort are key. The text then seems to offer a pretty stark assessment of the current state of the world.
It does. It describes the present time as one where everyone is essentially petit fallen or impure.
Fallen, but aware of it.
Mostly unaware, according to the text.
Yeah.
Because Maya's influence has led to touch buddhi, a worthless or degraded intellect. People can't see their true state.
And this relates to how they see history, the ages.
Yes. It clarifies their view on the length of the ages. It contrasts the Sat Yuga, the Golden Age, with the current Kali Yuga, the Iron Age. Both are part of this 5,000-year cycle.
So correcting misconceptions about how long those ages last.
Exactly. And it harks back to a time, the Sat Yuga, ruled by divine beings like Lakshmi and Narayan.
Lakshmi and Narayan, familiar figures.
Right. It draws a clear line between Devata deities, the virtuous and Asur demons, the unrighteous, and this fundamental conflict is ongoing.
Leading towards
a massive yagya. This term comes up again. Here, it seems to mean a huge spiritual sacrifice or transformation.
For whom?
For the entire world. The text says the whole world will be swaha in this yagya, consumed, purified, transformed.
Consumed? That sounds like destruction. Is that the idea?
It definitely points towards a significant destruction as part of the purification process. It mentions things like bombs being made as evidence of this destructive potential building up.
Wow.
It suggests this transformation will be swift, leaving behind the impurities of this age to make way for the next golden age. It contrasts today's huge population and materialism with the fewer people and simpler, purer state expected in the Satyuga.
Okay, quite a dramatic vision of change. Let's shift to the personal path again. The text talks a lot about remembrance, yad. What's the core instruction there?
The core instruction, directly from the Father to the souls, is Mamakam Yad Karo. Remember me alone.
Remember me alone. Just think about the Father.
Not just think, but remember with understanding. It explicitly warns against just mindlessly repeating shiv shiv. That's not it.
So quality over quantity. Understanding is key.
Absolutely. You need to connect consciously, deeply. And crucially, the text says, first you must realize I am a soul. Understand your own spiritual nature.
Before you can properly remember the Father.
Exactly. Self-realization first. Then, understanding the Father's true identity. It suggests that people who are naturally more introverted, antarmukhi, might grasp this easier.
Why introverts?
Maybe because they're more attuned to inner realities. The text connects introversion with understanding the soul as a point of light, grasping the cycle of 84 births, all leading towards becoming Satopradhan.
Satopradhan, the highest state.
The most elevated, the purest state, yes.
This understanding of the soul's journey, the 84 births, it really emphasizes the significance of this current lifetime, doesn't it?
Immensely. This is framed as the anti-jam, the final birth in the cycle, before returning home to the spiritual realm.
The final birth, that adds urgency.
It does. And therefore, it's crucial to reduce Sharikavan body consciousness, to lessen that attachment to the physical self.
Why? How does that help?
Reducing body consciousness helps improve conduct. The text suggests that people overly attached to the physical body often speak and act inappropriately, and they lack that crucial honesty towards the yagya.
It connects back to honesty and conduct. Makes sense. The text also seems to value service quite highly.
Very much so. Service and transformation go hand in hand. The Father is said to remember and elevate those who are serviceable, those dedicated to serving the cause.
And this service needs to be genuine.
Yes. It's contrasted with merely pleasing oneself, which is likened to chana javana, like casually chewing some roasted gram. It's superficial satisfaction versus real, meaningful effort.
So no superficial spirituality.
Right. It requires introspection, skillful ways of explaining these deep concepts to others. Although it acknowledges that understanding in, say, public exhibitions might be limited. Not everyone gets it fully.
So different levels of commitment and understanding are expected.
It seems so. The text recognizes this variation. But the true bach, the real children, the dedicated followers who serve fully, they are the ones who inherit swarg, heaven, the golden age.
And this process of understanding, it's ongoing.
Yes. It mentions Vicharasagar Manthan, the churning of the ocean of knowledge. Both the Father and the dedicated followers are constantly engaged in this deep thinking and understanding.
I liked that train analogy you mentioned earlier, needing 2 engines to get up a steep hill. What did that represent again?
Yes, the 2 engines. It represents the combined effort needed for spiritual ascent. It's not just the individual pushing alone. It signifies a partnership, perhaps between the soul and the Father, or the collective effort.
A collaborative climb. But there are warnings too, right? About falling back.
Definitely. A strong warning against complacency. Maya is always there, ready to pull you down even after you've made progress. So constant awareness is needed. Awareness of the Father's presence and awareness of the severe consequences, baridan, for negative actions.
Serious consequences. And bringing disrepute after joining this path, that scene is particularly bad.
Extremely serious. Bringing the Father's name into disrepute after becoming a talaj? His child is portrayed as a grave mistake. Inheriting the legacy of Vari's Bana, becoming an heir, is no small thing. It demands responsibility.
Understood. The text then broadens out again, talking about peace and world transformation.
Right. It contrasts human efforts, like giving out peace prizes, with the idea that only the Father is the true bestower of peace.
So human efforts are insufficient.
Perhaps seen as well-intentioned, but ultimately limited compared to the divine source of peace. The core message to share, it says, is that establishing real purity, peace, and prosperity happens through God's shrimat, the divine guidance.
Shrimat. That word again, divine guidance.
Yes. And it references the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, noting its existing reverence, kind of linking its own message to that respected tradition, but positioning itself as the key interpreter or fulfiller.
And it comes back to that idea of global change, destruction,
Yes, it reiterates the impending destruction, purification of the entire world, even temples, mosques, all current structures. Everything needs to be purified before the new age.
That's comprehensive. It also touches on some practicalities, doesn't it? About balancing life and spirituality.
It does. Like managing households while pursuing this path. And it cautions against spiritual centers like Madhuban becoming overcrowded, like a dharmashala, just a public rest house.
Why the caution?
Because its function is meant to be like a university, a place of serious learning and transformation. Overcrowding hinders that. It even mentions a future order from the Father to restrict bringing children there.
So, maintaining the sanctity and purpose of the learning environment, it also mentions that this father figure, Shiv Baba, is somewhat hidden.
Yes, the hidden nature of Shiv Baba, Father Shiva, is noted. He's not widely recognized, even though he guides through a human medium. Maya can still cloud people's perception, hindering their progress towards the Rajdhani, the New World capital, the goal.
And the full realization of all this, the destruction, the consequences, that comes later.
The text suggests the full impact will be experienced later, though some followers might have had glimpses or premonitions.
Okay. And there's a warning about aiming too low.
Yes, a strong warning against settling for a third-class spiritual status. That kind of mindset leads to accumulating negative consequences. The encouragement is to aim for the level of Lakshmi and Narayan.
The highest ideal.
Exactly. It also briefly mentions a past practice of keeping detailed daily charts of actions and how Maya tends to discourage such disciplined efforts. And it reiterates the cycle of happiness and sorrow over the Atakalp, the half cycle.
So a lot of guidance, warnings, and encouragement packed in there. How does the text conclude? Are there final blessings?
Yes, it ends with very personal messages. The Father's love, remembrance, and a spiritual good morning are sent to the sweet beloved children, Meeth Meeth Sikilad Pachi.
That sounds quite affectionate.
It is. And the spiritual father offers namaste to the spiritual children. Then it summarizes the main points for inner practice, the Dharana Kiliyamukya Sar.
The essence for practice, what are they?
2 key things. First, practice introversion, detach from body consciousness, improve your habits, and avoid that superficial self-satisfaction, the Chana Chabana.
Okay, focus inward. Improve genuinely.
Second, be extremely cautious on this high spiritual climb. Watch your actions carefully. Avoid ego, and really strive to become like Lakshmi and Narayan. Aim for the top.
Be careful. Aim high. Got it. And there was a specific blessing and slogan, too.
Yes. The blessing Vardhan is, may you be a Sahaj Purusharthi, one who makes effort effortlessly, who makes the atmosphere spiritual through the elevated state of your spirituality.
Effortless effort. Creating a spiritual atmosphere. Interesting.
It emphasizes influencing your surroundings positively through your own inner state. And the slogan is, become a bestower of blessings and keep giving the blessing of good feelings and good wishes.
Be a source of positivity. And finally,
the Avyat is share, subtle, unexpressed signals or inner guidance. It encourages listeners to be victorious by remembering the combined form of the Father, to move forward with enthusiasm, surrender weaknesses, and maintain joy and spiritual nourishment.
Okay, so to wrap this up, this deep dive into Aj Ki Murli has really walked us through a whole system, hasn't it? From that intense daily self-reflection, the Padamel, and the value of honesty.
Right. Through to understanding their specific view of the divine, the role of Maya as this negative force, the grand 5,000-year drama.
And the path towards purification, remembrance, service, and ultimately aiming for that golden age state, like Lakshmi and Narayan.
Yeah, what really strikes me is that constant thread of inner work, that deep personal honesty required. And this concept of the whole world undergoing a transformative yajna, that's a powerful and quite unique idea.
Definitely. And for you, our listener, looking to get a real handle on different perspectives quickly, this text offers a very distinct framework for thinking about self-improvement, reality, and, well, your place in it all.
Which leads us to a final thought for you to maybe reflect on. How might adopting some form of truly honest daily self-assessment, like the Padamel described here, impact your own life, your own understanding of your actions and why you do them? What does being honest towards your most important endeavors really mean in your own context, whatever that might be? Something to chew on.